in the midst of a brutal war where every day was filled with the sounds of gunfire and explosions, there was a woman who never grew used to the chaos. She was a medic, known for her skill in saving lives where others saw none. Her hands were steady, her heart even steadier. She had been on the front lines for years, but every time a soldier came through her tent, her focus was the same: saving them, no matter the cost. It was another evening, just as the sun began to set behind the smoky sky, that a soldier was brought in. He was badly injured, his face covered in dirt, his clothes torn, and his body barely hanging on. The medics around her had already given up, but she couldn't. Not yet. With a quiet determination, she started working, her fingers moving swiftly as she cleaned his wounds. His breaths were shallow and his pulse weak, but there was still a flicker of life in him. She couldn't help but think, as she worked, that he had something special about him. His eyes opened for a moment, and he looked up at her with a strange, faraway gaze. He didn't seem fully aware of where he was, or even who she was. "The void, Sovereign," he muttered, before slipping back into unconsciousness. The words made no sense to her. She paused for a moment, unsure whether she had heard him right, but she quickly dismissed the thought. Soldiers were always delirious, mumbling things they had no control over. For hours she worked without rest, stitching him up, administering fluids, and ensuring his wounds didn't become infected. Her focus was laser sharp. It had to be. She couldn't let him die, not under her watch. When morning came, the soldier was still alive. His breath was steadier now, his body slowly healing, though he remained unconscious. The medic wiped her hands on a towel, exhaustion weighing heavily on her. She had done it again, another life saved. But as she looked down at the soldier, something about him felt different. His skin was pale. Almost too pale. His eyes, though shut, seemed to shimmer faintly, as if they weren't fully human. There was something otherworldly about him, but she couldn't put her finger on it. She pushed the thought aside. It didn't matter. What mattered was that he was alive. A few hours later, the soldier stirred again. This time, his eyes flickered open, and he stared at her, confused. Yet there was something in his gaze, something intense. It made her uneasy, but she did her best to keep her calm. "Where?" he asked, his voice hoarse. "You're in the medic tent," she replied, trying to sound reassuring. "You were badly injured, but you're going to be fine now." He blinked, as if trying to gather his thoughts, his gaze fixed on her. And for a moment, she felt like he was studying her, as if looking deep into her soul. "The void! Sovereign, you saved me!" His words were softer this time, almost like a whisper. But they sent a shiver down her spine. She hesitated, not sure how to respond. She had no idea what he was talking about. The Void Sovereign? It sounded like a title out of some myth or legend, something that belonged in a storybook. But before she could ask more, he closed his eyes again, sinking back into unconsciousness. She didn't know it then, but that moment would change everything. The medic worked for the rest of the day, tending to other soldiers who came in. But her mind kept returning to the strange soldier in her care. His words echoed in her head. The Void Sovereign. She had no idea what it meant, but the way he had said it, with such certainty, made her wonder. There was something important about him, something bigger than the war they were all fighting. That evening, she went to check on him again. To her surprise, he was awake, sitting up in his cot, his face pale but focused. His eyes met hers, and for a brief moment, she felt like he knew something she didn't. "Who are you?" she asked, her voice soft but firm. He didn't answer right away. Instead, he took a long breath, and his gaze shifted toward the door, as if checking for anyone else. "I am no ordinary soldier," he finally said, his voice heavy with a deep, quiet power. "I am the Void Sovereign." "But I've been hiding, waiting?" The medic felt a wave of confusion wash over her. She wanted to laugh, thinking it was some kind of joke or delusion. But there was something in his eyes, something that made her question everything she knew. She didn't know it yet, but the man she had just saved wasn't just a soldier. He was a being of unimaginable power, someone the entire universe feared, and she, unknowingly, had brought him back from the edge of death. But there was one thing she knew for certain. Her life, and the war she was fighting, would never be the same again. The next few days passed in a blur. The medic could hardly focus on anything other than the soldier she had saved. The words he had spoken still echoed in her mind, the Void Sovereign. She had tried to push them aside, but something inside her felt uneasy. He wasn't like the other soldiers. There was an air of mystery around him, something different, something she couldn't quite explain. She had never seen anyone recover so quickly from injuries like his. Normally, soldiers who had been through such a traumatic ordeal took weeks to heal, but he was already sitting up, moving with ease. He looked healthier than ever. There was a strange power in his eyes, as if he knew things that no one else did. The medic spent the days caring for the other soldiers who were brought in, but her mind often wandered back to him. He never spoke much, only when he needed something. His gaze was always distant, as if he was lost in thought, and yet there was a calm confidence about him that made everyone around him feel safe. One evening, as the sun began to set and the medics finished their work for the day, she approached the soldier's cot again. He was staring out of the tent, his eyes fixed on something far beyond. The moment she stepped closer, his gaze shifted to her. "You seem troubled," he said quietly, his voice still hoarse from his injuries. She nodded, trying to hide the concern in her eyes. "It's just, you don't seem like the others. You recover so quickly, too quickly. What are you really?" He didn't seem offended by her question. Instead, he looked at her as if considering something, then spoke softly. "I told you before, I am the Void Sovereign. I was born with powers beyond what you can understand, but I've kept them hidden for so long, I've had to." The medic stared at him, not sure what to think. The words didn't make sense. But there was a quiet certainty in his voice that made her believe him. "The Void Sovereign?" she repeated, her voice barely a whisper. "That doesn't sound real." "It isn't a title that many in your world would understand. To you, I am just a soldier, a man who fought for a cause. But to the galaxy, I am something far greater. I was once the ruler of a powerful empire, one that spanned across the stars." The medic's heart raced. She had heard rumors of ancient civilizations and long-lost empires in the stars, but she had always thought they were stories. "Myths, maybe? You ruled over the stars?" she asked, her voice shaky. "What happened? Why are you here?" He sighed deeply, and for the first time, his calm demeanor cracked. "I was betrayed," he said, his eyes darkening. "A rival faction took my throne. They cast me out into the void of space, leaving me to die. I've been hiding ever since, waiting for the right moment to return." The medic was silent, absorbing his words. She didn't fully understand what he was telling her, but there was something in the way he spoke that made her believe every word. The things he said didn't feel like a story. They felt like truth. "You're saying you're the ruler of an entire empire," she said slowly, still trying to wrap her mind around it. "And now you're—"
"Here," he nodded, his expression growing more serious. "I am hiding from those who would use my powers for their own gain."
"But the war you are fighting, it's part of something bigger. Something that has been brewing for a long time." The medic was confused. "What do you mean?" "There are forces beyond your understanding that are moving in the shadows," he explained. "You may think this war is about resources or power or control, but it's not. It's about something much darker. My enemies are using the conflict to search for me. They want my power. The medic felt a chill run down her spine. She had always thought that the war she fought in was just about survival, just about helping the injured and doing her part. But now, with the soldier's words weighing on her, she began to see the bigger picture. There were forces at play that she couldn't even begin to comprehend.
Why didn't you tell anyone who you were?
She asked, her voice soft.
You could have stopped this war.
He shook his head. I had to stay hidden. The moment people find out who I really am, they will come for me. And not just for me, but for everything I could bring with me. The power, the knowledge, the control over the stars. There are people who will stop at nothing to use me. The medic looked at him, understanding slowly beginning to dawn on her.
So, you've been hiding all this time?
He nodded.
Yes.
But now, things have changed.
I can't hide forever.
She stood silently for a moment, her thoughts racing. Everything she thought she knew about the war, about the soldier she treated, suddenly seemed so small. There was a vast universe out there, one filled with dangers and powers beyond her comprehension. She finally spoke, her voice steady. What do we do now?
He looked at her, a hint of respect in his eyes. Now we prepare.
The war is about to change, and I'll need your help. You've already saved me once.
But the real battle is just beginning. The medic felt a mixture of fear and excitement rise within her.
She didn't know what the future held, but she knew that she was about to be part of something far greater than she had ever imagined. And for the first time in her life, she wasn't sure if she was ready, but she was determined to face it. The medic couldn't sleep that night. Her mind was full of questions. The soldier, the one she had saved, had told her things that seemed impossible. He claimed to be the Void Sovereign, a ruler of a vast empire, and he spoke of enemies, power, and galaxies far beyond her world. It felt like a dream, something too big to be real. She lay in her cot, staring at the ceiling, trying to make sense of everything. The war she had been fighting for so long now seemed so small compared to the universe he described. She had always thought of herself as just a medic, someone who treated the wounded, someone who helped. But now, she was tied to something much larger than herself. She was tied to him. The next morning, she went to see him again. His tent was quieter now, the usual bustle of soldiers gone for the day. He was sitting on the edge of his cot, staring out at the horizon. His presence seemed different today, more focused. When he saw her, his eyes met hers with an intensity that made her heart race. I can't stop thinking about what you said, she began, her voice soft. About the war.
About your empire.
Why didn't you tell anyone who you were sooner? Why did you hide? He looked at her, his gaze steady. It wasn't safe. My enemies have spies everywhere. The moment someone knows who I really am, they'll come for me. They'll try to control me, use my power for their own purposes. I couldn't let that happen. She nodded, understanding the weight of his words. But the war, it's bigger than we thought, isn't it? He nodded slowly.
Yes. It's not just about the people you fight on the battlefield.
There are forces pulling the strings from behind the scenes, trying to use this war to find me. They'll do whatever it takes to capture me and gain control of the power I once held. The medic felt a chill run down her spine. She had known the war was cruel and complicated, but she hadn't realized just how far-reaching the stakes were. This wasn't just about soldiers fighting for survival. It was about an ancient power that could change everything. Then what do we do now? She asked, her voice trembling slightly. How can we stop them? We don't stop them, at least not yet, he said. We need to stay hidden, for now. I've learned a lot about their plans, and I know how they operate. But if we move too quickly, we'll be walking straight into a trap.
We need to be smart. We need to wait for the right moment.
The medic wasn't sure she understood what he meant. They had already been hiding, and it had done nothing to slow down the war. The more she thought about it, the more the weight of their situation settled on her shoulders. She wasn't just a medic anymore. She was now involved in something far greater, and she didn't know if she was ready for it.
And what about me? She asked. What do I do now?
You said you needed my help, but what can I do? I'm just a medic. He smiled faintly. You don't give yourself enough credit. You've already helped me more than you know.
You saved my life.
And now we need to use what we have to survive. She shook her head. I don't have anything. I only know how to treat wounds, how to save lives. I don't know how to fight or how to lead armies. I'm not who you think I am. You're more than just a medic, he said. You have a strength inside you that you haven't discovered yet. I've seen it. It's in the way you care for others, in the way you never give up, no matter how hard things get. That's what will help us survive. His words made her feel something she hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. It was a small, fragile feeling, but it was enough. She had never thought of herself as anything more than a healer. But maybe there was more to her than she realized. She sat down beside him, her thoughts swirling. I don't understand why you trust me, she said.
I'm just a soldier in this war. I don't have any special skills, no powers.
I'm just me. He turned to face her fully. You're exactly who I need. The war is not just about strength or power. It's about knowing who you are and using what you have to protect others.
You've been doing that every day, you just didn't know it.
The medic felt a sense of clarity settle over her. She had always thought of herself as ordinary, but maybe that was the key. Maybe in this world filled with powerful beings and cosmic struggles, it was the ordinary people, the ones who cared, who fought to save others, that could make the biggest difference. They sat in silence for a moment, each lost in their thoughts. The soldier's presence was calming, but also unsettling. He was someone who had seen things that no one else could understand, and yet he had placed his trust in her. She wasn't sure what that meant for her future, but she knew one thing. She couldn't turn back now. I'm ready, she said quietly, her voice steady.
I'll help you. I don't know how, but I will.
Moo. He gave her a nod, a small but grateful smile crossing his face. Good, because the road ahead is going to be long and dangerous. But together, we'll face it. And we'll survive. For the first time in days, the medic felt a sense of peace. It wasn't much, but it was enough to give her the strength she needed to face what was coming. She didn't know how to fight the cosmic forces that were after them, but she knew she couldn't do it alone. And with him by her side, she felt like maybe, just maybe, they had a chance. The days that followed were filled with tension. The medic and the soldier, now fully recovered, moved through the camp with a sense of purpose. Though the medic still struggled to fully understand the magnitude of the situation, she knew one thing for certain. The war she had been fighting was not the only battle at hand. There were darker forces moving in the shadows, and she was no longer just a healer. She was part of something much larger. The soldier, no longer just a soldier in her eyes, but the Void Sovereign, had explained to her the danger they faced. His enemies were powerful, ruthless, and they would stop at nothing to capture him. But there was more at stake than just his life. These enemies sought to control the entire galaxy, using his power to shape the future of the universe. He had been hiding for so long, waiting for the right moment to strike back, but now the time was approaching. It wasn't just about surviving anymore. It was about making a stand. The medic had spent hours with him, learning what she could about his enemies, about the factions that were pulling the strings behind the scenes. The information was overwhelming, but it was clear that they were being hunted. And not just by soldiers on the battlefield, but by the very forces that controlled the war. As she sat with him one evening, looking over the maps of the battlefield and the star systems beyond, the weight of their situation began to settle on her shoulders. She had never imagined that the simple task of saving lives would lead her here. Yet, she felt a strange sense of responsibility, not just for the soldiers around her, but for the entire galaxy. She turned to him, her voice filled with determination. "What do we do now? How do we stop them?" He met her gaze, his eyes calm yet filled with the burden of years spent in hiding. "We don't stop them in one battle. This isn't something we can win with brute force. The enemy is too vast, too powerful. But we can start with the people who are already fighting against them." "We can build alliances." The medic nodded, understanding the weight of his words. The galaxy was vast, and they couldn't fight this battle alone. They needed allies, people who were willing to stand up against the forces that sought to control everything. But finding those people would be a challenge. "I don't know where to begin," she said softly. "We've already been fighting this war for so long, and we're still here, stuck in the middle." He reached out, placing a hand on her shoulder. "That's why we need to act now. We need to find the right people, the ones who believe in the same cause. And once we do, we can start taking back what's ours." The medic wasn't sure if she was ready for what lay ahead. She had always been a healer, someone who helped others. But now she was being asked to lead, to fight alongside the Void Sovereign and become part of a rebellion that could change everything. She wasn't sure if she was strong enough for this, but she knew she couldn't turn back. In the days that followed, they made their plans. They reached out to various groups across the galaxy, small resistance movements, rebel factions, even independent soldiers who had been left behind in the chaos of war. Slowly, they began to build a network of allies, people who were willing to fight against the darkness that was consuming the galaxy. The medic found herself growing stronger in ways she hadn't expected. As she worked with the soldiers and their allies, she discovered new parts of herself, parts that were capable of more than just healing. She had a natural leadership within her, a quiet strength that made others want to follow her. She began to understand that this was the role she was meant to play in the fight against the darkness. But as the network of allies grew, so did the danger. They were being watched. The Void Sovereign's enemies had spies everywhere, and every step they took brought them closer to being discovered. One evening, as the medic and the Void Sovereign sat together in their small tent, the air heavy with tension, he turned to her, his voice serious. "We need to move quickly," he said. "The longer we wait, the more time they have to prepare for us. We can't let them find us before we're ready." She nodded, her mind racing. "How long do we have?" He didn't answer immediately, instead staring at the maps before him, his expression unreadable. Finally, he spoke. "Not long," he said quietly. "We have to strike before they're ready for us. Once they know we're coming, they'll stop at nothing to destroy us." The medic felt the weight of his words. There was no turning back now. They were going to fight this war with everything they had, no matter the cost. That night, they made their final preparations. The medic helped organize the movement, ensuring that everyone knew their roles and the path they had to take. The Void Sovereign worked with his allies to devise a plan of attack, one that would strike at the heart of their enemy's power. As the first light of dawn began to break, the medic stood by the Void Sovereign, looking out over the camp. It was time. The time for hiding was over. They were ready to face their enemies head-on, to fight for the future of the galaxy. And though she had no idea what the future held, the medic knew one thing for certain. She wasn't alone anymore. She was fighting for something greater than herself, and with the Void Sovereign by her side, they stood a chance.